First, he lost his dad when he was 4. Then last month, his mom died unexpectedly in her sleep.
I tried and I tried to get her away. Couldn't.
Jaden is understandably heartbroken.
Anybody can die. That's anybody.
But there's another side to his grief, a side he first made public a few weeks ago when he told his aunt and now guardian, Barbara DeCola, that he was sick and tired of seeing everyone sad all the time. And he had a plan to fix it.
And that was the beginning of it. That's where the adventure began.
Jaden asked his Aunt Barbara to buy a bunch of little toys and bring them here to downtown Savannah, Georgia, near where he lives.
Thank you, sweetie.
So he could then
You want me to have it?
give them away.
Thank you, man.
What is it you're doing?
Well, I'm trying to make people smile. Rubber duckies, dinosaurs.
Because those are the things that make people smile.
Yeah.
And what happens to their face? Really?
Really.
See that man right there?
Jaden targets people who aren't already smiling and then turns their day around.
You made me smile.
He's gone out on 4 different occasions now, and he's always successful,
It's to make you smile.
even if sometimes he doesn't get exactly the reaction he was hoping for. It is just so overwhelming to some people that a 6-year-old orphan would give away a toy, expecting nothing in return except a smile. Of course, he is paid handsomely in hugs. And his aunt says these reactions have done wonders for Jaden.
It's like sheer joy came out of this child. And the more people that he made smile, the more this light shone.
Jaden says that's mostly true.
But I'm still sad that my mom died.
I bet you are.
This is by no means a fix, but in the smiles he's made so far, nearly 500 at last count, Jaden has clearly found a purpose.
I'm counting on it to be 33,000.
33,000? That's a pretty big goal. You think you can make that goal?
I think I can.
I think he just did. Steve Hartman on the road in Savannah, Georgia.
Many people think that happiness is by chance or by luck. But the Bible teaches that happiness is a result of what we do rather than luck and what happens to us. Happiness is the outcome of the habits we have and the attitudes that we develop and live through life. I think this little boy would agree that happiness comes by the habits you practice and the qualities you display rather than luck or chance. He had terrible luck, but he chose a lifestyle that is producing happiness. And I found it very interesting that in his mind, he said, I hope it'll reach 33,000. On YouTube, it's in the hundreds of thousands so far that have viewed this video. So I think it spread a lot further than he ever imagined it could. Think about it this way. When we look at this column, 2 columns here of happy and unhappy, and you look at these words, if you see which one column you think they fall in, if you're a kind person, do you think you're more likely to fall into the unhappy column or the happy? Or humble, patient, cruel? Is it happy or unhappy people? Rude, arrogant, generous, compassionate. Which column do you think they fall in, and therefore what column you would fall into? On this, our last Sunday of our series on happiness, we're going to look at 4 qualities that Paul reveals in this letter we've been looking at called Philippians. And we're going to spend most of our time right there in Philippians 2, verses 19 through 30. But it's important to set the stage here a little bit. We've mentioned this several times, but Paul is in prison. And he's there simply because he's been preaching the gospel, telling about Jesus. He's writing a thank you letter back to the church at Philippi because they had sent a care package to him, some money and things to help take care of things. And they needed somebody to deliver that package. And that person's name who delivered the money to him was Epaphroditus. It's a tough one. Epaphroditus. In this letter, he mentions another person, Timothy. And so that's 2 young men that we're going to talk about here a little bit this morning. And he says, I want to send them back to you there in Philippi as soon as I possibly can, because I wanted to bring you joy. Now, in explaining why he wants to send them back to Philippi, we can pick out some real qualities here for us to emulate, for us to practice and copy if we're going to create or have happiness as a result of the lifestyle we lead. And the first one is this. We've got to learn to take the focus off of ourselves. If we want to be happy, we've got to take the focus off of ourselves. Listen to Philippians 2, verses 19 through 21. I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. I have no one else like him who takes a genuine interest in your welfare. For everyone looks out for his own interest, not those of Jesus Christ. Now, none of us can help and had any control when we were born and what place in history we were born. We were born here in America. We live here in America now in 2016. And we've seen a transition in our country over the years that we've become a much more me society. That everything is about us. And this me, I society or culture affects every institution in our country. It affects the home, it affects government, it affects family, it even affects the church. But look at the praise Paul places on Timothy. He says, there's no one else like him who takes a genuine interest. And that's saying a lot for Paul to say that because he knew people all over the world. Do you find that to be true today, that it's hard to find somebody who's totally, genuinely interested in your well-being and has no side game going on? And we live in such a me culture that it becomes very easy to second guess the motives of people, and we want to know what their intentions are. I'll give you an idea just how subtly this goes on in our culture. Look at some of these advertisements here. Look at Coke. See if you can read that. It says, open a Coke, open happiness. I don't care how much you like Coke. You don't open a Coke and all of a sudden open happiness. Look at this next one. It's an Audi car commercial. And those circles there is the Audi emblem. And it says joy. And I know you probably can't read the small print, but it says joy finally has meaning. What? But that's what we're look at this Pepsi one. Live for now. And it's all about me. What's happening with me now? Look at this next one. Sprite. Obey your thirst. Oh, don't matter what else is around. You just go with how you're feeling that day. Look at the next one here. Burger King. Have it your way. And all of these things are fine if you're trying to sell a burger or a soft drink or something. But if it becomes our culture, it just doesn't hold true. It doesn't hold up to the test. And I'm not picking on Burger King, but look at this next one. See if you didn't find this very true. This is the advertisement for what a Whopper looks like, and that's what a Whopper looks like when you get it. You know, and like I say, I'm not picking on Burger King because you can find these comparisons on the internet for all the fast food restaurants. But the point is, none of them live up to what they're advertising. And if we buy into the culture of, if I do it for me, that everything's going to be fantastic, because it's not going to be. Look back there. It says, Paul says, no one else. Unselfish, genuine people are so rare. They're so rare in this world, but they are happy people. Genuine, unselfish people are happy people. And we have to learn, if we're going to be that, to shift the focus off of ourselves. And there's no easy way to do it, because it starts off being our nature, then it's the culture we live in, but it is the way to happiness. It is a habit or quality you develop, and you see, it's your habits that shape your life, and your life that what produces or results in happiness. Shift the focus off of yourself. Second thing we see from this is in verse 22, become someone people trust. Verse 22 says, but you know that Timothy has proved himself, because as a son with his father, he has served with me in the work of the gospel. Paul had seen him tested. He had been with Paul in life and death situations, sacrificial situations. He had been there. He had seen him prove himself of being a great and trustworthy, dependable person. And what does it have to do with happiness? If you're a trusted person, you're a happier person. But if people do not trust you, it is hard to be happy. I don't know if you've ever purchased anything on credit, but if you have, they do a thing called a credit check, credit check. And all they're doing is saying, we're going to look at your past and see if you're worthy of us giving you something and you haven't paid for it completely, that you will pay for it over time. I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, but every single day of our lives, somebody's doing a credit check on us. Not talking about finances. I'm talking about the people around you. And they watch our actions and they watch our words and they see if they add up. That you're a trustworthy, dependable person. That I can take you at your word. People are doing it to us all the time to see if we're the real deal. You remember in theater, the two masks that you see, it's a symbol of theater. You know, it's always a mask. It has the turned down frown and then a happy one. That's a universal symbol of theater. But that originated in the Greeks. That when the actors and the plays that they would do, a lot of times one person played multiple parts. And he would put on the mask of a sad person and come out and play one thing, or a happy person and go out. And the Greek word that they used for that is the very same word that we have in English, is the root word came for hypocrite. Because you're playing two parts. Playing two parts. Are you play acting or are you pretending? Paul says to be a genuine person, there's things we got to do. One is live with integrity. Make sure your actions match your words. We're not talking about being perfect because we're not going to get there. Not every one of us are going to do everything we said we were going to do. We're just not going to do it because we're just humans. But it's talking about being genuine here. No hidden motives. Doing your best to do what you said you were going to do. And when you don't, you're transparent about it and say, I messed up. I didn't do what I said I was doing. Be a person of integrity. You've got to love the way the New Living Translation says, Proverbs 25:19. I love this. Putting confidence in an unreliable person in times of trouble is like chewing with a broken tooth or walking on a lame foot. I absolutely love that. Trying to chew on a broken foot, broken tooth. I need more sleep. Or walking on a lame foot. Doesn't that ring true? Doesn't that ring true? Trying to rely on somebody that isn't dependable. If you don't take anything else, take this one little short phrase with you today. The greatest ability is dependability. The greatest ability is dependability. Keep your promises. Just simply keep your promises. Psalm 15 is only 5 verses long. And in there, he's talking about who a person is that pleases the Lord. And it's just this one short phrase in Psalm 15:4. If you're going to be a person that pleases the Lord, it says this. Psalm 15:4 says, who keeps his oath even when it hurts. Who keeps his oath even when it hurts. That's when you're going to find out if a person is really genuine. It's easy to keep a promise when it's going to go good. Yeah, I'll come to your wedding in Hawaii. I'll be glad to. But it's when the stuff that costs you, when it's uncomfortable, when you have to make a sacrifice and you keep your word. That's when you find out if you are a dependable person. You want to be happy? You want to be happy in this life? Then practice these things and you will become a person that people can trust. It's another one here, the third one here. It says, it says, learn to work well with others. Learn to work with other people. You remember, this is old school, I don't know if they still do it or not, but you remember on the report cards and progress reports, one of the things that works well with others? I didn't pay much attention to report cards. I tried to ignore them because I usually weren't that good, but I do remember seeing works well with others. That always made me feel good that it was there. I want to tell this story on he was a child when this happened, and he's a grown adult now, but Jonathan Hester was having a birthday party, and he was just a little bitty fella. Joyce, I don't know if y'all remember this. Little bitty fella. It was going to be at the end of the day. We were invited, Janice and I, end of the day. And you know how when little kids are and they're excited about something, they get so keyed up in the day, they miss their nap. So by that time, they're just wired in every possible way, good and bad. And at the party, all of his cousins are there. And, you know, you'll fight with your cousins a lot worse than you will anybody else. And so everybody's there, and the party would go on. You get to the roller coaster, all the kids playing. Then you hear somebody crying, and they come in, Jonathan hit me. And so Kay would get on Jonathan, and this went on several times, over and over. Finally, one time, a kid starts crying, and I heard Kay say, well, Jonathan, you've hit everybody at your party. And I remind her of that, even still today, that's one of my favorite stories. Jonathan grew up to be a good young man. I haven't heard of him hitting anybody in quite a while. So he learned along the way, you know, to get along well with other people. Look at verses 23 through 25. I hope, therefore, to send him as soon as I see how things go with me. Remember, Paul's in prison. And I am confident in the Lord that I myself will come soon. But I think it is necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, fellow worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. In these three descriptions, Paul reveals what kind of person he is. Think about it. He says, he's my brother. He's my fellow worker. He's my fellow soldier. What great compliments. And they're describing someone that you can count on. Somebody that has your back, that's going to be there during the tough times. Everything may not be agreeable, but they're going to be there. And they're going to be there through the tough times. If we're only going to work well with people we like, who do things the way we do them, it's going to be a short list of people that we work with or work well with. And that's not the pathway to happiness. We're not going to be a brother. We're not going to be a co-worker, a fellow worker. We're not going to be a soldier for Christ if we can't find a way to work well with people. People that we don't necessarily agree with or do things the same way. Verse 26, it goes on, it says, for he longs for all of you and is distressed because you heard he was ill. That is so cool. Epaphroditus is concerned that his home church had heard that he got sick. And he's not concerned that he got sick. He's concerned that they heard he was sick, and now they're upset, wondering how he's doing. And he wants to go back to them. And Paul is going, I don't want them upset. I don't want you upset, Epaphroditus. So what we're going to do is we're going to get you back there as quick as we can so everybody experiences more joy. Isn't that so neat? That a church 800 miles away is concerned about Epaphroditus. Epaphroditus is concerned about a church 800 miles away. Paul is concerned about the man right there with him and the church 800 miles away. Can you beat that? Can you come up with something better than that? That they're considerate of each other. The more considerate you are, the happier you're going to be in life. Didn't say it's going to be easy. I'm saying it's the happier you're going to be. When you're considerate of your spouse, of your children, when you're considerate of your parents, when you're considerate of your co-workers, your church family, the happier you're going to be. It takes work to do all of this over the long haul. When you stop working on a relationship, is usually when the relationship stops working. When you stop working on a relationship, it's usually when the relationship stops working. It takes work. It's true of marriage, family, friendships, and the church. One final thing here. Live for something worth dying for. If you want to be happy, learn to live for something that's worth dying for. Look at start with verse 27. He says, indeed he was ill, still talking about Epaphroditus, and almost died. But God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, to spare me sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore I am more eager to send him, so that when you see him again, you may be glad, and I may have less anxiety. Verse 29, welcome him in the Lord with great joy, and honor men like him, because he almost died for the work of Christ, risking his life to make up for the help you could not give me. Wow. One of the sad things in life is that so many times we are giving first-class allegiance to second-class causes, making big-time commitments to small-time causes. And in the end, they're going to betray us. They're going to let us down because they cannot stand the test of time. They just can't. And when we look back on our lives, we've got to see the things that we invested our time and our monies into and our talents, how long that influence is going to last. And what Paul is saying in just another way is that he lived his life seeing the big picture. Seeing the big picture. We talked about that some last week. Seeing life with the big picture. Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't let those things bother you. See the big picture of life. Live for something that's worth dying for. When the church decided to send help for Paul, it was 800 miles away and you had to walk to get there. And they said, we got the money, who's going to take it? And a hand goes up. Epaphroditus says, I'll do it. The word there, it says when he risked his life, is the word used for gambled. He gambled his life that he would make it. In other words, he said, it's worth the gamble. It's worth the risk for me to take this long journey carrying money for this man. It's worth it because it's bigger than me. It's a big picture living. And it almost cost him his life. But he was okay with that. Today is Victory Sunday. Victory Sunday. 37 additions to our church this past year in 2015. And that's something to celebrate. 37 additions to our church. And that's why we started doing this our third year, because we want to celebrate that. But there's a lot of other things that we've got to celebrate here. And I look back just quick. These came to me just as quick as I tried to think, as I sat down and was writing this. You took up an Easter offering to build the safe houses in India for places that have been persecuted and beaten and no place to go. And just took up an offering like $27,000. We took up the Nazarene Fund on top of everything else we're doing, $44,000 to help those people. At Christmas, there was literally over 100 children that you gave clothes and presents to. Working with several people in the congregation who worked and lined them up in the school systems. Angel Tree, helping the children that it's not their fault that their parents are in prison and have no Christmas waiting for them. And you provided Christmas for them. Missionaries around the world have been funded because of your generosity and the direction of the elders to send this money around the world. That's big picture. That's big picture living when we look and see those things. But how much more willing are we willing to do? Because the greatest danger to a church that is doing well is that we get comfortable and we get satisfied. But how much more are we willing to risk? Because when we stop risking, I guarantee you, when we stop risking, we'll start having things to celebrate. Are we going to be satisfied with what we have? And I tell people this all the time. If I was not the minister here, the preacher here, this is where I'd come to church. Because that's how I feel about this church. But are we going to risk enough to even ask ourselves the question, are we willing to do more? Are we willing to do things different or differently than what we're already doing? Are we willing to look at our county and say, you know, we're doing a great job in some areas, but our demographics, there's just some people we're not going to reach the way we're doing things now. And we're not going to scrap what we're doing now, but are we going to be willing to stretch and say, how can we reach some people that we will never reach sitting right here doing the things we do? I don't have all the answers. The elders don't have the answers. The staff members don't have but we're going to be willing to look and figure out, are you? Are you going to be willing to do that? And go along and follow and get uncomfortable and get uneasy and take some risk? That's when we'll celebrate. That's when we're going to be the happiest, is when we do that. I'm going to ask you today, will you pray the riskiest prayer in the world? Not just once today, but will you pray it all year? It's a short prayer. You don't even need, you can put your pen down. You don't need to write this down. This simple prayer. God, use me. And if you'll pray that every day, your life's going to get exciting. Because you're going to be forced, if you pray it and you mean it, you're going to be faced with things that's going to force you to take a risk and to step outside of the shell if you'll pray it. And then we're going to have a lot of things to celebrate. You see, you can pray it sitting in your home. If you live alone, you can pray this and God's going to change your life. You can be in a home where the husband or the wife or the kids are not going to cooperate with you one bit, and you pray this, you're going to see a change in your life. If you can get a husband and a wife praying this together, look out. If you get a family agreeing to all of this, use me, God, look out, everybody. And if we can get a church that prays that every day, God, use us, look out. That'll be a true victory Sunday.